Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Miller, Ms. Wade, thank you for being there. I regret it's under these difficult circumstances. Mr. Miller, in response to some of Senator Toomey's questions and Senator Kennedy's questions, I felt like we've got two different Millers before the committee. On the one hand, we have people questioning your independence, particularly under the weight and the pressure of an administration. But you again investigated someone who was appointed by President Bush. You yourself were appointed by President Bush. That investigation didn't change one bit, regardless of the pressure you got from Capitol Hill, and I would suspect others. And what was the ultimate disposition of the person in the GSA? What was the ultimate disposition of that person's position?
She was asked to resign, Senator.
Okay. And earlier, Ranking Member Brown characterized one of your writings as something that seemed to question your commitment to independence. In your response to him, you said it was a mischaracterization of what you wrote. Would you mind going back over that for me very briefly? I do have a question for Ms. Wade as well.
Well, my concern was that inspectors general are independent of both the executive branch and the congressional branch. And my concern with the article was that inspectors general need to understand that they are also independent of undue pressure from the Congress. And that's the gist of the entire article. In fact, I say in the article that it's fundamental for an inspector general to be independent.
So just to sum it up, you investigated someone who was put forth by President Bush. You were put forth by President Bush. You continued, in spite of pressure you were getting from Capitol Hill and others, to not change one word of your report, and it ultimately resulted in the removal of that person from a position. That sounds like a pretty good case history on independence to me, but I guess others may have a different view. Operationally, do you think that the 5-year period is going to be sufficient time to audit this program?
Senator, I'm going to do my best to work myself out of a job. I believe that we need effective oversight. I do know that there are a lot of oversight instruments, organizations that will be providing oversight. If we can do this within 5 years, I'd like to do that. But it's too early to tell exactly whether 5 years is the right amount of time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Miller. I have confidence that you'll go about this job in a very independent way, and you'll hold anybody accountable who tries to veer you off of what you think is right. Just one last question for you, and then if time for Ms. Wade. Is there such a thing as good fraud and bad fraud?
I would think that
Probably
any kind
not.
I would think that any fraud is bad.
I think fraud is fraud. And so what I expect, and I appreciated the time that you spent on the phone with me yesterday, and I asked you if you were committed to taking a look at all of the benefactors of the programs that come under the CARES Act, and you will look through the simple lens of, was any of the monies, the taxpayer dollars that were sent out in good faith to help us recover during this virus response, inappropriately allocated to somebody because of fraud? I want you to go after the big businesses, the small businesses, and everybody in between if they've taken advantage of this program. I hope that we won't have members on the other side of the aisle that will come up with this concept of good fraud and justified fraud, because in my opinion, fraud is fraud. So I look forward to supporting your nomination, Mr. Miller. Ms. Wade,
Thank you, Senator.
Ms. Wade, you've got, we've had some time to digest the CARES Act. There's clearly things that we need to do to adjust it. We effectively did by appropriating the additional more than $300 billion to the Paycheck Protection Program. But within your lanes, can you think of anything that we should be thinking about moving forward as we make potential changes, expansions, refinements, maybe changing deadlines or timeframes? Can you think of anything off the top of your head that would be within your lanes once you're confirmed?
Yes, Senator, that is a great question, and I appreciate your work here. As you alluded to, the CARES Act has already provided tremendous support to housing markets and to borrowers. First of all, as you know, it has provided up to a year of a forbearance for borrowers. It has provided an eviction and a foreclosure moratorium. I think this is an evolving situation. It is one that we are continuing to monitor on a day-to-day basis and in real time, and we'll use a data-driven approach to provide any additional assistance and any flexibility. But I think, when it comes to what should we think of as sort of the next phase, HUD always appreciates assistance in providing flexibility across offices in order to get this aid and other aid, any future assistance that Congress is considering, out as quickly as possible. So I would be happy to work with you on that objective.
Yeah, I can think of the forbearance issue and other things we're going to have to take a look at. So I look forward to getting your input. Congratulations and happy birthday to your little girl tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.